Today I'm going to be talking about Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. It was published in 1847 under the pseudonym Currer Bell. Jane Eyre is the fictional autobiography of the character Jane Eyre from when she's between the ages of 8 and 30. So it starts out with her living with her uncaring aunt and cousins before being shipped off to a charity boarding school called Lowood, where she gets an education and ends up teaching for 2 years before moving on to become a governess at Thornfield Hall. At Thornfield, she's in charge of the education of a young French girl called Adele, and when Mr. Rochester, who's the owner of the house and the guardian of the little girl Adele, comes home, he and Jane get on pretty well. But it is a 550-page book. Obviously a lot more happens. There's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of different places and a lot of different people. I'm not going to go any more into the plot. I've never really liked Victorian fiction. The society at the time and the sort of social conventions really bore me, and I find that a lot of the themes of the books are things that don't really interest me, like romance and wealth, which is probably why it took me 6 weeks to read just half of this book. But Jane Eyre is the absolute cream of the crop. I can really appreciate the quality of the writing, the development of the characters, the plot twists, and in that way it was a really enjoyable read. That being said, there isn't actually that much I want to talk about to do with Jane Eyre. Usually when I pick up a book, I go through it and I'm like, oh, that theme's really interesting, that character has a trait that I think would be really interesting to discuss. And throughout this, I was enjoying reading it, but there wasn't anything that was striking me as something I needed to talk about and expand upon. Perhaps that's because Jane Eyre is completely overanalyzed, but I think my level of interest in the book ends with the reading of it. And that being said, of course, I still have things to talk about. Something that did strike me when I was reading this is the conflict between wealth and intelligence. The thing about Jane Eyre is that she's very headstrong and determined and clever, but for most of the book she can't really do anything with it because she has to earn her way in the world, and she's a dependent on the school, and then she's a dependent on Mr. Rochester. And it's only when she's attained some wealth that she has the freedom to explore the world and is on the same level as Mr. Rochester. But counter to that, the emphasis on education. When Jane goes to Lowood, she loves learning and reading stuff, and you can tell that she's becoming a much stronger, fulfilled person. But actually that knowledge doesn't help her sustain a fulfilling life. She spends time teaching children of all ranges of poverty, things like geography and history and maths and reading, but all those skills taught her was to be more inquisitive in a world that limited her to do anything with that inquisitiveness. There's a lot of emphasis and encouragement to be clever and learn things, when really in the book there's absolutely no evidence of that helping you succeed. In the relationship between Rochester and Jane, it isn't their mutual love of history or whatever that brings them together. It's their passion and it's their wit, and that actually doesn't have anything to do with the book learning that she's been doing this whole time. So they could both be really well educated, but Jane as a dependent is always going to be here, and Mr. Rochester's up here, and it's only when she attains a wealth that they can be together. So that kind of frustrated me, but I guess it's more of a commentary on the world we live in. Money is everything, as usual. Although I think the real reason Jane and Mr. Rochester are so compatible is because they're both so flaming stubborn. Rochester is described as blunt and sometimes insufferable, and Jane is just like headstrong and independent and willing to speak her mind. But when it comes down to it, they're just stubborn. Rochester develops this jealousy plot, which, for the record, I am so against in real life, where he pretends to court this woman in front of Jane to make her fall in love with him, and he's so sure that it's going to work that she just falls right into his arms. And later on, when shit goes down, Jane just leaves. And it's not out of piousness or self-preservation or anything that makes her do that. I think it's just stubbornness. She just wants to suffer. She wants to put herself through hell, and she wants Mr. Rochester to feel the pain of her leaving. Obviously it's autobiographical and she doesn't put down words, but I just wanted to say that what I got from the book was that they're meant to be together, not just because they're so passionate and open and whatever. It's actually sort of like their bad sides that tie in as well. Sorry, this has been kind of rambly. I didn't make any notes because I didn't think they would help, even though they definitely would have. This has been Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. Because I really enjoyed the plot and the language, I'm going to give this 5 stars. But caveat, out of 7, I've got this special 7-star system, and that I will explain at some point, but 5 is really good. If you've read Jane Eyre before, please tell me your favourite thing about the book down in the comments, and I'll see you soon. Bye. And no, I have set up a Twitter account just so I can talk about books, because I can't really do that on my main account, so follow me. It is @charreads. Dropping the Zard. I'm going to try and drop the Zard.